Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, did you know there's a skill many men never learn that ends up seriously limiting your professional success and satisfaction in your love and sex life? I put together a free guide to explain this unknown skill and give you exactly what you need to use it today. Get it by heading over to ShaynaJamesCoaching.com or text the word ALIVE, A-L-I-V-E, to 44144. That's 44144. You'll also get access to Man Alive outtakes, raw footage, and bonus videos you can only get there. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm excited to be here today to talk about work-life balance, because the older I get, the more I realize that life is short. And, if we're spending most of our days and hours working, there's a lot missing. And especially for the men I've worked with, there is a sense of feeling like they're dying inside, or like there's not enough meaning or excitement in life to continue. So I'm excited today to have Doug Morneau on. Doug, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here too. And for those of you who haven't heard of Doug, let me give him a quick intro and then we will dive in. So Doug believes that regardless of the economy, there are opportunities to generate leads and make more money. And during the financial crisis during the biggest financial crisis in the history of the world since the Great Depression, Doug helped his clients raise over $100 million in venture capital for their publicly traded companies. He also hosts a podcast called Real Marketing, Real Fast, and consults with clients wanting to expand their sales using email lists, social media, celebrity endorsements, and online advertising. And he just completed his first book, 3 Big Lies, which talks about the pitfalls and successes of using rented email lists to build your business. And it's a bestseller in Canada, US, and Europe. Congratulations for that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for being here today. And thank you for bringing not only your, incredible business success, but also being able to speak to us about how men can have a balanced life.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. I think that men often, and I can't obviously generalize everybody, but I speak for myself. I relate and refer to myself by my career. Mm-hmm. So it seems like we identify as someone, my wife would get together and she'd meet somebody and I would say, so what do they do? And she goes, I don't know, but I know that they have this many kids. And and I'd go, but what do they do? And I would meet somebody and I'd know where they live and what they do for work and how long they've been doing that. And, all the work related stuff. And so we so often tie our identity to our career or our job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you had a pivotal moment in your life with one of your children. You want to tell the story of what happened that created the shift for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years and, so it was been interesting raising a family that way, being the only income earner. And I was grinding away, working lots of hours. And we had just had our first child. So we had my son and he was probably just about 2. And I came home one day at the end of the day and I walked in, he ran to the top of the stairs, which, any parent just loves to see their kids. Mm-hmm. And he said, hey, Mom, look, Dad came home to visit.
Mm.
And I went, oh man, I'm doing exactly what I didn't want to do. I've seen people do that. I watched my grandfather do that. I thought, I do not want to do that. And
it must have felt heartbreaking to hear him say that.
That was a really big wake up call. Yeah. I figured, hey, kids are young, our first son was young. We had another one, just about any day. And I thought, they won't notice Dad's working away, but apparently they notice.
They do. They really do. Right, which is interesting too. I mean, for some men, it takes having someone else in their life to be able to say, oh, I'm going to stop working so much for my kid or for my partner or for, someone who matters to me. Sometimes it's hard to actually do it for yourself.
Well, and I think lots of times that's an excuse. I mean, I've got a number of my friends who have done very well in business, and some of them say, hey, I'm working hard to provide for my family. And, I have to call bullshit because they could basically retire and they could burn money to heat their house. So they're not doing it for the family, they're doing it for other reasons.
What do you think those are?
Well, some of them, I think, seriously are to escape from their family life, to not have the responsibility, be with their spouse, be with their adult kids. Yeah. So they say, oh, well, look at honey, I'm doing this for you. It's like, no, you're not. You're doing it for you. It's got nothing to do with providing for your family.
Interesting. So you think for some men, it's time to actually really get honest with themselves and realize, oh, this is kind of an avoidance of another part of their lives.
Yeah, or get a friend who will be, or a coach that'll be brutally honest with you, and not say, hey, you're doing a great job. Say, hey, like, dude, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
Like if you've got some marital issues, then go get help. If you've got issues with the kids, go seek some counseling. Get help. Mm-hmm. But there's got to be more to life than. I mean, I love what I do for work, but it's not healthy for me to do that 24 hours a day.
No. And actually on one of my other podcasts, I was talking with Jed Diamond, who's a therapist who's been working with men for 40 years. And I can't remember exactly how he said it in his book, but it was something like, when there are struggles, women seek help and men die. Like that ultimately, right? Men have this drive to keep going, keep working, and can end up really sick or, and create this crash that didn't necessarily have to happen.
Yeah, and I think part of that really depends on your personality. I mean, I did years ago something similar to a DISC, a personal style indicator test, and we were in a room full of people, and we filled it out. I was with my wife at this business event, and then we compared notes, and it basically they divided the room into 4 groups, and I went over to my corner with the what they call high B or type A personalities. Realized I was the youngest and the only one who hadn't had a heart attack.
Wow.
So I know that my response to stress is double the effort and double the effort and double the effort. Hence how I got sick at one point.
Right, you did. You said you ended up in bed with pneumonia at one point.
Yeah, for 3 months. I mean, it was my son just got engaged and we were at his engagement party. And I said to my wife, I got to go home. She said, we're having an engagement party. I said, I'm gonna collapse. Wow. And we left, went home, and I spent 3 months confined to bed, could barely get up and down a set of stairs in our house with double pneumonia.
Wow. So, okay, there's a couple areas I want to get into, but one of them is, what did you do? Like after your son said, hey, mom, daddy came home to visit. How did you actually start making the changes to have more balance in your life?
Well, to respect your audience and be authentic, I didn't do much for a while. I just kept grinding away thinking, hey, I should do this, but didn't do that. And so it took a few years for me to, I think your mind needs to be ready before you take action. And I heard it. I felt it in the moment, and then it was over. And, it just took a period of, as the kids were getting older to make sure that, hey, I need to be at all the events, because now we had 2 kids and then we had 3 kids. So we had, multiple dance lessons and lacrosse and soccer, or not soccer, but football and rugby, and on it went. So it was a gradual transition. I'd like to say that I immediately made a change. I did that with my health, but I wasn't in that place yet with the kids. But
that's relieving though, I think, right? To see that, it doesn't have to happen all at once. But what do you mean when you say that your mind has to be ready, or how could you get your mind ready if it's not?
Well, I'll give you an example for my fitness. So I had a personal coach. He was coaching me, and he said, Doug, on a scale of 1 to 10, you've said that your health is really important. Yet, since I talked to you last, you haven't made any effort to do anything about it. So either it's important or it's not important. Why don't you get it in your calendar? So, I went through that process with him for quite a while until I hired a trainer. And then, I changed trainers because I didn't like that trainer, and I eventually quit. So I think your mind needs to be prepared. And I think lots of times we put lots of pressure on ourselves to change an old habit. So that's what I mean. I think you need to be ready to make the change. I mean, you must see that when you're coaching people all the time.
I do. And it has me want to hash out a little bit what readiness is. Do you know what I mean? Or how someone could get ready if they're not, because they might see, oh, wow, this is having an impact on the people I love, or this is having an impact on my health. But I'm kind of curious in this moment, if you have any sense of, how can you get ready if you can see the storm is coming, right? Or you can see the crash is kind of looming in the distance.
Yeah.
How to get yourself ready to change even when it doesn't feel good.
Well, for me, it's I'm not going to say it's easier, tougher than for anybody else, but I have a pretty black and white personality. So I'm like the light switch. I'm either on or I'm off. I'm not in between. So I just made the decision and I started putting stuff in my calendar that was important. And so, what I would say to people is look in your calendar and what's in your calendar will tell me what you think is important in your life.
Yes, that's true.
So I started putting it in the calendar and I said, these times are sacred. And what sacred meant was, unless I was dead, I was not going to break that commitment. So if I was going to my son's rugby game at 3 till 5, that meant I don't care if it was my biggest client in the world, unless I was, in jail or dead, right? I was going to be there.
Yeah.
And so that's how I did it.
I love it. And I actually use my calendar in a really similar way, because I find if I don't schedule it, it's not going to happen, Yep. And I'm curious if, was there any pushback, or did clients actually respect you when you said, I have to go to my son's rugby game?
Some of both. Some clients said, hey, I really respect that you set boundaries. And others just couldn't get their head around it. I recently had a conversation within the last month with a client, and he said, well, I send you emails to your business email and you don't respond till after 10.
Yeah.
Like, well, what's up with that? I said, well, blame Tim Ferriss. Blame the 4-hour work week. He went, well, I answer my email all the time. I went, I know. And
how's that going for you? Right?
and it's going well for him, right? I mean, his idea of success is doing deals and banking money. And I'm not saying that I don't like to make money, but given the choice of having health and family or the biggest bank account in the city, the choice for me is pretty obvious. For him, I think he would have a tough time deciding.
Right. Well, right. And so then it seems like it gets back to, what are your values? What is really important to you? Right. Yep. And then are you taking actions that are aligned with that? Are your scheduling your commitments? Are they actually aligned with what you say is really important to you?
Yeah. And then you might have to fire those clients.
Exactly. Right. I was going to say that, right? If you don't feel connected or you don't feel aligned with certain clients, then maybe it's time to move on and get some other clients.
Yep. And my kind of rule of thumb is that if I wouldn't invite you to meet my family, we're probably not a good fit for you as a coach or a client. So if I wouldn't have you at my place for dinner, now admittedly, I have some clients that are way outside the line and I wouldn't bring them to my house for dinner, but but for the most part, that's how 99% of my clients are.
And okay, well then what has you kind of break that rule or that, that principle to have those other clients?
Well, they're just clients that they're good clients for me. They don't require a lot of time. I do some media buying for, and I just don't like I don't like for language personally around women. So I wouldn't have them over cursing around the kids, right? So it's like they're bank robbers or doing something horrible, but we're pretty respectful around women and kids, and I think that everybody should be. And if I don't think they can contain themselves, then I'm not going to have them over.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think it takes something to actually get clear and say, these are the clients who are a fit for me, and I'm actually going to pass on clients who don't feel like a fit. And I'm wondering, if you have suggestions for that, or for people who are working a job, and they're not an entrepreneur. So it's a little bit different in that way.
Well, for the clients I pass on, I've had some good experiences, some bad experiences. I've had some people, email me and yell and scream and curse and swear at me and curse me out in front of their whole company. I can't believe you won't take me on as a client. And so what I've learned to say is, I've looked at your situation and my skill set, and I kind of evaluated what I think your needs are, and I don't think I can meet your needs. So, I'm just sorry at this time I wouldn't feel right working with you. And they've
But
still taken offense to that, but it's a way to say, no, you don't want to say, hey, I think you're a dickhead and I don't want to work with you.
right.
Because that wouldn't
And
go over
then
well.
on your side, how do you get to a place where, I mean, I imagine everybody's in different situations, right? For some, it's like, if I don't take this client, I don't know if I can support my family. So
I think you have seasons in life. We chatted just quickly before we got recording this.
mm-hmm.
And I think there's seasons. And when I started my business, anybody who could write a check and fog a mirror was a client.
Yeah.
Right. So, hey, if you can fog the mirror, I'll move your hand, just sign the check, right? Because we need the money to pay the mortgage.
Yep.
And then as you mature and you get more confident in your skill set and you ask more money for the work that you do, you can actually have less clients and be more particular with what types of clients that you want. And, just look at it this way, the better clients you have, just think of who their sphere of influence is, the higher level of referrals you get.
Yeah.
So you move into a whole different realm of business.
Yeah. Right. So there are seasons and there's also a progression. And again, like you said before, things don't happen necessarily overnight. We don't change, sometimes, right? You said you're black and white, you made a decision, I'm going to exercise or do this, and then you do it. But also recognizing that you gradually changed your schedule to make it work with your kids, and that it is okay to take clients, especially as you're starting, who will pay you. And then you get to really have that vision and continue toward being more selective.
Yep. It's kind of like when you first get your first job. I mean, your first job probably wasn't what you dreamed of doing for your whole life. So right. So it's like your first clients, they're not going to be perfect. And, either was I.
Yeah. What do you think? I just got curious, for men who are kind of questioning, like, wow, could I actually really have more life in my life, less work, more life, more balance, right? What have some of the benefits been for you that you could inspire other men with?
Well, I guess for me, it would really come back to the health and wellness side. I was new to that. I was never an athlete growing up. My wife is an athlete, so it came naturally to her. But what I found was the better I was training physically and the cleaner I was eating, the more energy and the more clarity I had and the more productive I was. And so that was the one thing that was a big aha for me. It's like, wow, I can just crush a bunch of stuff in 6 hours a day that used to take me 9 hours a day. So I can get an hour and a half workout in.
Interesting.
And then the other thing was identifying my own body, like listening to my body and saying where, at what point in the day or what days of the week do I have the most amount of energy? And let's put the most productive, most important things in those times. Let's do all the client calls, the money stuff in the morning before people's days fall apart. And then when I get to a spot when I'm unproductive, it was really about forgiving myself and going, you know what, I'm not going to beat up on myself because I know I should be, in parentheses, working, sitting here, working, supporting my family. It's like, I'm just surfing the internet. That's useless. I might as well go for a hike. I would just put on my hiking shoes and head off into the mountains and get some quiet time and come back refreshed. And, our kids are all grown now. So then I might come in, put a couple hours in the evening. My wife wants to study a course, or she's reading a book. And so I'll come in and crunch a couple hours. But in the middle of the day when I couldn't focus, I just put my hands up and went, can't focus, can't force myself. I'm going to make a mess of what I'm doing. I'm leaving. And I would get out. So for me, that was a huge aha, and it's been amazing.
That's so great. And anything about, getting to be part of your kids' lives or your wife's life that you realize, oh, wow, I would have missed this?
One of the things that we did was we started taking a lot more family vacations. So I realized that you need to have a certain, level in your business to do that. But we started holidaying like 12 weeks or more per year with the kids, and just started pulling them out of school and figured, hey, they'll learn more spending 6 weeks in Europe than they will, so they miss a week or two of school. Not a big deal. They're going to see the real life stuff. And so we've been fortunate in that we've traveled to some really cool places with the kids. And, and so we look for activities that we could build into their lives early on that we could carry on. So we spent some time in Bora Bora and we all got certified for open water diving.
Nice.
So, we've since gone on a cruise and done some stuff with the kids and brought the kids along. And now we can all dive together. We took the kids out, and the kids are into fitness and they're into hiking, and they watched us get healthy and they watched us train. So, my daughter now is a pastry chef, but she's also a trainer at a gym, not the gym we go to. She's at a women's only gym. But so my wife and my youngest daughter go work out with their sister.
That's so great.
So, and then we started doing date stuff. So I would do a date with the kids like I would do a date with my wife. So we would set aside a specific time and go do an activity or go have lunch or go have a beer or go whatever. And then we talked to the kids about gifting. We said, hey, we don't need anything. Gift us some time. So my son gifted me a pub crawl. So there's a bunch of microbrews. So my wife and his wife dropped us off at one end, and we spent the evening sampling beer all the way down the block and then picked us up at the other end. Right? My other daughter took me to a movie. Another daughter took me go-karting. So we just started doing stuff like that was intentional, and it was just the two of us together.
I love that. And, part of what I love too is, or what I can see, that at any level, whether you are in a job and you have set hours or you're an entrepreneur, you can do these things with your kids that don't take very long and they don't cost very much, right? Going on a hike or whatever it is, I think it's easy to get caught up in thinking I have to have more money or I have to have more vacation time, but it's not necessarily what it takes.
Well, sometimes, I caught myself last week, my son and daughter-in-law live really close to us. And so they came over with their son. So my grandson came over and I could see him out my office window running around, and I'm thinking, okay, should I go outside and chase Elijah around the yard, or should I keep working? Thinking, okay, this isn't deadline stuff. I'm going to shut the computer off and go outside. I don't know how long, he's going to want to come over and hang out with his grandpa. Right. And go run around the backyard and kick a soccer ball. Yeah. So you go do that. So like you said, didn't cost anything. Today, my son's over right now borrowing some tools. My youngest daughter's home, and my oldest daughter's over with a friend because there's a river in our backyard. So they're out for a swim in the river. So today, everyone's at our place. And they'll be all here for dinner. So that's the sort of stuff that we do. That's not big deal stuff. But I figured it's really tough to get your kids to want to hang out with you when they're adults, if you don't invest time and build their relationship when they're kids. Yep.
I think that's so true. God, and having a 6-year-old, it's just the preciousness of, right, how much longer is he going to want to walk with me and hold my hand, or how much longer are all these things going to happen, right?
Yeah. And I'm not perfect. I'm not saying it was easy and I did all the right things. I mean, if you looked at my yearbook, you would see that I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I was 25. And I explicitly said I would never get married or have kids.
Wow.
So I didn't hit the million by the time I was 25. It took me a lot of years longer than that. Yeah. I married. I have 3 adult kids and my first grandson. And I think that if I didn't get married and I didn't have kids, I probably would have worked myself to death with a heart attack and not had any life balance at all.
Yeah. I'm glad that didn't happen.
Yeah, my wife most days would probably agree with you.
Yeah, right. Most days.
Most days. Except for Wednesday mornings at the gym.
Yeah. Is there anything you can say about, times are changing, real estate is insanely expensive. So, some people are making what would have been seen as good money, and yet now it's not necessarily enough, and not everyone is an entrepreneur and has the option of making more money, just like that. So what suggestions do you have for people to be able to make more money?
Well, I would say, first of all, consider a side hustle. So, if you're not geared to be an entrepreneur and you feel that you're not there yet, find something that you can do a couple hours a day, but don't trade time for dollars. Like don't go get a second job where they pay you by the hour, because then you're going to limit what your upside is. Yeah. And look for something that may be in your line of work. So I'll give you an example. So my son builds refrigeration units for large companies. So like coolers that are like 40 feet tall and 200 feet square. I came in contact with a client of mine in the States that sells refrigerant. It's a new environmentally friendly refrigerant. These guys are out of Los Angeles. I said to them, hey, here's a perfect side hustle for you. If you can talk to the companies that use refrigerant and they switch to this company, you can get paid a really handsome commission, like for as long as they use it. Mm-hmm. So there's an example of an easy side hustle that doesn't require investment, website, business card. It's just who does he already know? He's already in that field. So sometimes it's just about thinking about what you're doing without making a total shift. Like, well, I'm doing X. I could never go over and do Y. Don't do that. Find something that uses your existing connections, maybe your existing talents, maybe your existing resources, and is there a way to do that? I'm so excited these days. I think the opportunity for people to start and run their own business on the side or full-time with the changes of what's happening online have leveled the playing field and have never been so easy or inexpensive to get started as they are today.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And you actually do you help people do that, or you do more of the getting them out there, promoting them?
I do some of both. So I do some what I would say charity work. So I will work with people that are just starting that need a hand and clearly just don't have the resources. So I give time, and sometimes we donate websites and that sort of stuff to help them get started. Mm-hmm. And then typically the companies that are in more of the startup phase are clients of mine that are venture capitalists that are funding them, and they need to launch a new product or new service. And so while they're a startup, they're a startup with a bankroll behind them.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So, a side hustle, and you don't have to do something completely out of left field, right? You could actually find something that supports, or, that's already in the same realm as what you're doing. I was just thinking, it reminded me of this, it's not a fairy tale. It's like a story I was listening to with my son on a podcast recently, where there was a king and a cobbler, and the king realized he'd been handed everything his whole life, and he wanted to understand, like, could he actually make it if he wasn't? And he met this cobbler. He set up all these experiments where basically he was like, you're not allowed to make or fix shoes anymore. And so then the cobbler went out and realized, like, okay, well then I'm going to use my wheelbarrow and I'm going to chop wood. And then he said, you're not allowed to do this. Anyway, to make a long story short, it was just one of those reminders for me where I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm hearing this, right? Because I think it's common, but you can tell me if you agree, that we can get into this like worst case scenario or catastrophe fear of, oh my gosh, but what if this falls apart? Or what if I couldn't do anything else? And yet we tend to be so resourceful. People tend to be so resourceful when we actually face a crisis. And yet the fear of the crisis can be more of what takes us down. Do you know what I mean?
Paralyzes, sure. Yeah, I agree. And I the way that I look at things like that is I say, so what's the worst thing that could happen? Mm-hmm. How likely is it to happen? And then if it happened, could I live with it? And that's kind of my big decision-making secret, if you want. It's not really a secret, but to do that. So, I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but I don't want your listeners to think that I graduated from business school with an MBA and have lots of business experience. Yeah. So right out of high school, I worked and I got a trade. So I'm actually a certified steel fabricator. So I spent 4 years building oil drill rigs and paper mill equipment.
Mm. No, I love knowing this.
And then I went on to a totally different industry. I went into the mining industry and spent about 6 years leading crews of geologists and engineers and staking claims and running gold mines. Again, totally unrelated. And then I went into marketing after that.
Well, and let's make that. How did you make the jump from mining to marketing?
I was working for these geologists and these engineering firms, and what I noticed was a lot of the mining companies were run by stockbrokers, and they really knew nothing about the mining side. They knew just only about finance. So I started talking to them and said, hey, you need to kind of get this message into a form that people can understand it, and I could kind of translate it for you so you can take it to the brokers and they can understand what you're doing. And so people started hiring me and people started referring me. And that's how I kind of got into the marketing field was old school. And so, we didn't use email. I went down, and for some of your listeners, they're not going to know what this is, but you can Google it. I went and bought the microfiche, all the stockbrokers in Vancouver, and I highlighted all the VPs, and I just cold called them incessantly until they agreed to see me.
Wow. Okay. So boldness, right? I mean, you just went after something you saw, and B, right? It seems like you, within the field or within what you were doing, you saw a need or a problem, and then you came up with a solution for it.
Yeah. And it was almost like, once one person saw it, then they thought, hey, their friend should have this too. So they just started, and that was really the beginning of my marketing career.
Wow. Amazing. I love knowing that. And I love other people, I love the listeners knowing that, so that it's not just like, oh, right, you went to business school, you had your life easy, you had it cut out for you. No, you made it happen.
Well, and I think the reason I would blame Dale Carnegie for that. I read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, when I was going through school. And probably one of the only books I read in grade school.
You read it in grade school?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was weird. But that's the sort of stuff I was interested in. I mean, my grandfather was a businessman, so I was reading that. My dad would read the sports page in the newspaper, and I'd read the stock market page. So that was an interest I had, but I went through the trades and I did these things. And, again, what's the worst thing that can happen? So the biggest problem I faced, and probably people face, is that we're afraid to go and offer our services or our knowledge because we don't think we're yet the expert.
Yeah.
And all I can say is you got to get over it.
Yeah.
If you know a bit more than the person that you're trying to help, and you can help them, then you should help them. And if help them means that you ask them to pay you for giving them some information, then just do that.
Yeah.
I'm really disappointed and saddened to see really smart people who are still in school educating themselves because they don't think they know enough yet to go and put their trade to practice. And they're doing the world a disservice by not helping people, and they're doing their family a disservice by not earning an income.
Thank you. That's inspiring. Well, this is great. How can men find you, first of all? And then I want to hear, if there's one thing you wanted to leave men with, what would it be?
Okay. Well, you can find me online. So you can find me at Doug Morneau, MORNEAU.com. You can see all my social media handles there. I'm super active on social. If you do follow me or comment on social or Twitter, don't be totally surprised if I respond back. It's not a robot, it's me. Or you can email me at Doug@DougMorneau. And again, I'll get back to you there as well.
Great. Yeah. And what do you want to leave men with on this topic of work-life balance and how to have more of that balance?
I just say that you're smarter than you think, and that you should really just take hold of your dreams and your goals, and go for it. I don't think we were designed to work 40 years and hopefully live those 40 years and retire to do what we really want. I think we should be doing what we really want and getting paid for it for those 40 years. And then maybe it turns into be 60 or 70 years. If you really like it, why not?
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this, and for being here today, and for, being a man who has lived in that way of, it's like, I can feel the way you, what's the saying? Like you really, I keep making this motion with my hands, like you just bite into life, right? It's like, you're living in such a full way and such a bold way. And I really appreciate you, believing in people and reminding people like we are smarter than we think. And, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if you actually take a risk and reach out and you keep going? Someone is eventually going to say yes.
Yep. Yeah, one of the books I read was Price Pritchett, and the quote I'd leave you with is, what if all the barriers are imaginary? Like, just because common sense says your business should grow 10%, I'm not going to make any political comments or any other comments, but common sense gets you what common people have. So What if the barriers are imaginary? Why not start a home side business that's going to do 7 figures? Why not?
Yeah. Love it. Thank you. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.